Hello. So this is the Drupal usability meeting for March 12th, 2019. And we're going to talk about a bunch of things from JSON API and media, and then once if Jennifer arrives, then even more interesting things about reference fields and the filter format weights. Let's start with JSON API, I think.
Okay, great. About to paste the link here. So that's in the sidebar is the link to a JSON API issue. So the background to that is
just a sec. For the recording, we like to have the number written orally, so it's 303-9568.
Thank you. Yeah, so the situation is that JSON API is currently a contrib module, and we're trying to get it into core. In its current state, as of today, it has zero configuration at all. So you just enable the module, and that's it. Everything works. Everything is enabled and on. The security team sort of pushed back on saying that that's not desired. So what we're trying to do is introduce a single piece of configuration that lets you sort of basically decide whether everything is on, or meaning both reading and writing over JSON API, or whether only reading is enabled over JSON API. So that a site that is building applications that only need to use JSON API in read-only mode, so it can do so without having any write access enabled and sort of open to potential security vulnerabilities. So the question for this team is, in the link is there's what's being proposed is a new configuration form, which would live within the web services section of admin config. And then within that form would have a single checkbox, which the screenshot currently shows as saying enable read-only mode is the sort of the title of the checkbox, and the description of it is actually, I think there's a new screenshot in the issue that has different text. Okay, maybe it's that one. Okay, sorry. So the checkbox says enable read-only mode, and then the description of it says, when enabled, data cannot be added, changed, or removed via JSON API. And it's a checkbox that would be on by default. So someone who wants to have write access enabled would have to go here after enabling the module, uncheck the checkbox, and click Save Configuration. Any thoughts?
So one question I had, the two questions I had when we were talking about this with Wim is, for one is, it's kind of weird to disable something to enable write access, or at least that's not the way around I was envisioning it. So I'm wondering what the user expectation of, like, whether it's enable read-only mode or enable write access is. And then the second question is like the location of the configuration and the text on the screen. I wasn't super confident on, so that's what I would like feedback on the most.
My knee-jerk reaction, not as a UX professional, is I like your idea of having write access be opt-in rather than opt-out. Right off the top of my head, I think that makes sense.
It does get into a little bit Yoda if it's like, I want write access, so I need to unread only my site. What I like about this, though, is that it makes it clear that you're currently in read-only mode, and which may not necessarily be clear otherwise. I'm assuming, did Emily work on this screen? And if so, what was her?
This is a prototype from 3 backend developers.
Okay, got it. Okay, because I was wondering if if an actual designer worked on this, what their rationale was for the switch. Let me, Gabor, is this an actual working site? It is. Can you go to the private?
No, at this
Oh,
point.
it's not. Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. I see that. I was confused by that browser bar versus the other one.
Mhm.
I was gonna see what the screen for private files looks like, because that's also kind of like an opt-in to something. Just if we could copy and paste something from there. I'm also happy to hear opinions from anyone else while I set up a Simply test and check that. That's going to take a couple minutes.
Does Alex, do you have a local site set up?
Yeah, let me see if I can switch to that. Let's see.
Yeah, my feedback in the meantime is the description under JSON API is quite limiting. So if you enable other modules that would possibly add other settings, like do you enable JSON API extras? I don't know if that enables other settings or not, but if it would, then it would certainly expand the available configuration there. So you would need some more general configuration. So everything else is usually more generally explained and not as specific as this explanation is. I understand that this explanation helps drive people to understand that where the setting is, but otherwise, as a future-looking thing, it's too specific.
Would this be a category? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Would this be a category sort of like JSON API security settings, or settings including security, something along those lines, which is more generic?
So if JSON API extras was also on the same page, it would be security, but not only security, because it can do additional things. Like you can, I mean, kind of maybe, but I could anticipate other things being here. Something else is that if we're talking like the long-term future proofing part of it, there's the potential that this UI, this functionality, might become something that core provides to any decoupled application. In which case, the UI, the route would, we would redirect to the new page. Strings would change to cover that, and so forth. I'm not sure specifically, but I think that one thing that Angie had suggested for this page, that I think this isn't MVP, but would be very valuable, is that it would also it would list on the same page, if it's like JSON API security settings, it would list which resources are on and not, because so that the administrator can see without having to inspect every JSON API resource. That, oh, this means that my menu link content is accessible over JSON API, and my shortcut content, and my blah, 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 blah. So I think that would, if we had that on there, if we made that addition, then that would take up the scope of this page. And it would need to be a separate form of other configuration.
Yeah, I think there's one thing that core would change later on, but there's also contrib modules that may just add stuff to that screen. So that's why I think core needs to not be as specific as proposed in a patch.
Sorry, what's specific? I don't get what's specific about it. This is one checkbox, and there would be a second section.
No, this one where I'm showing the config index page itself. That's in
the description. Okay, I'm sorry.
Page as the place to enable or disable JSON API's read-only mode and nothing else. And other things like workflows says configure workflows, or REST says configure REST server settings, which allows contrib modules to add however many number of REST server settings that they want on that page. That may be all kinds of things, not only about the specific thing that core provides, right? So
that might be JSON API security settings, but configure restriction, blah, 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 blah.
JSON API behaves on your site or whatever. I don't know the exact words, but more general than what it is there now. To allow for modules to extend the config page with other configuration options.
What's the path to this page? Like, is this at the same path as the JSON API extras currently uses? I can't find this in the issue right now.
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, admin config services JSON API. So Gabor is right that if it is at that path, then the description is too.
Well, we would want it at that path. It's dumb to have two different configuration pages for the same module. So
Yeah.
we would want them both at the same place, ultimately. There is like some serious background happening there. So I looked at the private files thing. I had to find a screenshot of it because I can't get Simply Test working right now. But
Andrew, you can look at my screen.
But your screen does not have private files as a selection because you don't have it set up, I'm assuming. So here's a screenshot. Which what they do is default download method is either it's a radio selection, which is interesting, with public local files served by the web server or private local files served by Drupal. I'm guessing the reason they made it a radios is because it's not quite the opposite, versus this does make sense as like an opposite thing. In other words, the opposite of read-only is not read-only. So that works as a toggle, I think, rather than two radios. I don't know. I'm really torn. I really wish Christina or Emily or somebody more designery were on this call, because I feel really torn about. I had the same initial impression that Adam. What's that? I'm sorry.
Christina's on the call.
Christina's on the call. Great. Christina probably has no idea what we're talking about, but that's great.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Christina, just to catch you up, we're looking at there's a big discussion about the security of JSON API. The resolution of that was to ship JSON API as read-only by default. And in order to unread only it by default, we need a small UI for that. And so what we're showing on Gabor's screen there is the proposed user interface for this. And so maybe before I say anything, what is your initial impression of that? It's just not knowing that much about it, and that's it. Not to put you on the spot. And if you are talking, we can't hear you.
I was just saying that I'm not really sure. I mean, it's just the screen that I think Gabor is showing, right?
Yep, that's right.
I would say it makes sense. I mean, it's a check and a button. I'm not really sure about what other implications can have on other sites. I don't know. It doesn't seem complex. Maybe a text explaining what's that, but I don't know.
No, the thing we were kind of struggling with, that Adam's first impression and mine was the same, is that it feels a little backwards, like that instead of disabling enable read-only mode, you'd want to enable write mode when you want to like opt into that behavior. So that was the only kind of question, is whether that's like, I also agree, like, this is clear to me what it's happening. I am, my eyes twitching at the lack of the Oxford comma, but that's the only thing.
Andy, really I just took a note like 30 seconds ago to give them that feedback for the comma.
Yeah. I actually was Googling when this call first started whether or not that was in the standards or not. It's in the Umami standards as a thing. I don't know if it's in, actually Jennifer's here. Do we Oxford comma or do we not Oxford
Yes, we
comma? Do we? Okay.
It's in the content style guide.
Yes,
Hell
we
yeah.
definitely
Okay.
do Oxford comma.
Great.
And,
I love that.
and should we use nor rather than or?
Ooh,
What's that?
yeah, probably.
Should we use nor rather than or?
What does it
Or is
say?
that just too stodgy?
I know.
Blow that up.
I think that
But
I
can
zoned out.
Can I add something more substantive? So
Yes,
I think Angie, your point in looking at the file management page is that there is a place in the existing admin UI where we use the option of a Boolean using radio buttons rather than a checkbox. And I think using radio buttons here might avoid this problem with Yoda configuration and whether we're by enabling read-only mode, we're actually disabling writing. So so have two radio options, one of which says read and write using JSON API, and the other of which says read only using JSON API, and have the second one selected.
Yeah, I think that might be clearer. I mean, you can get away with the checkbox because it is literally the opposite of what you said, but the radios allows you to be specific about what each option means with different text.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Okay, so I think that would be the thing is, yeah, and so the first radio is allow read-only access to JSON API, and the second one is allow read and write access to JSON, or something like that. I think. I'm trying to channel my inner Yoroi and see if he would balk at that, but I think there's precedent in core certainly for the same type of setting, and that allows us to be clear about what each option means.
And then would you put some help in that underneath that field that says, and if you don't want JSON API access, disable this module?
That's a good point too.
I mean, because you said yes to read only, yes to read and write. What if you would just want to say no? And somebody might think, how do I disable it? I'm just saying.
Originally what we talked about was a three-way toggle actually, which was that. So it was three options. It was read only, read and write, and not at all. But I think the not at all got pushed back because in the case of not at all, just uninstall the thing. Okay. Although you're going to lose your configuration. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess. That's a little odd because we don't say that anywhere else. But
I know, but it's if you're going to have a radio that says yes, allow read and write, yes, allow read, somebody's going to think, well, what do I do if the answer is no? I mean,
yeah. So I actually gave additional feedback about this to him earlier today. The answer is disable the module or install JSON API extras to configure it in more detail. So I already had suggested to him that he should add a sentence to the hook help, informing users that JSON API extras can be used to configure, like you can turn on and off specific things. If you want only read access to nodes and you don't want anything else in the site to be accessible, there's a contrib module for that. It's not supported in the core.
That's a good idea.
So that could go in the help text that Jennifer suggested as well.
Okay.
And there will have to be additional updates to documentation, both online and in the JSON API help page. I think that should be part of this patch.
Say it again.
To add a handbook page to the JSON API handbook, which is great. But
also add it to the help.
Oh yeah, I think the JSON API extras is already covered in the handbook, I think. But this screen obviously isn't.
I had a quick question about this. Is this a Boolean flag, or is this something that could be multi-valued so that a custom module could come along and actually add additional options should they be available?
That actually, the contrib module adding a third value would be a great solution to some of the complexities that we had around so like if you install JSON API extras and you put it in read-only mode, does that overrule if you said I want write access to my nodes, or does it which takes precedence? And JSON API extras could extend it, give it a third option, and that is neither of the above, and it's just like follow what I say instead of this.
I like that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Thomas. Sorry.
I'll be real fast. Because I was thinking as we were talking about this, that you have the enable write mode, enable read-only mode, and you have the third option would be like custom or whatever. And when you selected it, if they don't already have it, it sends you to the extras module. And then if you had none and you selected none, that could then give you the helper information. So you'd actually have 4 choices, but you're not showing lots of extra information. It depends on what someone chooses, and then it instructs them on what the appropriate solution is to their situation.
My suggestion would be to not expose the custom option if the JSON API module is not installed. Like it could just be help text to customize this link, rather than having a third option that does nothing unless you it wouldn't do anything if you selected it without JSON API installed it.
I do think that this general train of thought, though, is the argument for making it radios instead of checkboxes, because then if there are weird use cases that of custom access control that Contrib comes up with, they have an easy hinge point to add to that. So
yeah, done.
Okay.
Anything else?
I have one more question, which is that so the help text, I think, when it has the appropriate serial comma, when enabled, data cannot be added, changed, or removed via JSON API. I've had mixed feelings about whether we should put a finer point on it that this is for added security or something. And I've been trying to think about how to phrase that so that it's not like, oh my God, my Drupal site's insecure, which I mean, kind of, but also kind of not. If the option is off, so is there a way we could?
Oh, sorry. Could you have whatever phrasing we use on the permissions page for things like that?
I think
implications for site security kind of thing.
I think it's prefixed with warning in the permissions page.
Yep, and then we could take off the word, but yeah, we could reuse this has security implications, and then so that way it's a good balance. It's language that we already use that they'll recognize, and it's a good balance between things. Speaking of warnings, the other question that I had is, should enabling write access send you to a confirmation form?
I mean, I'm kind of torn on that. The confirm forms are mostly just brushed right past. Like, I'm notorious for having deleted my own user on groups.drupal.org once because I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Oh, fuck, kind of thing. So possibly as an additional cover our ass kind of step here, but I think given the default option is secure and we're going to have some wording about security implications on the radio selection, we should be fine with that. But I guess I could go either way. I feel like that would make a third level of cover or ask, though, because you have the one level of cover or ask, which is this module is not enabled by default. The second level of cover or ask is when you do enable it, it's read only by default, and this would be a third level. And I just feel like at a certain point, it just gets annoying.
At a certain point, we're wearing pants and snow pants over our pants.
And then even armor over those pants as well. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I agree that confirm
forms are more for like, if you do this, you might actually delete data. You know what I mean? Like, that tends to be where you might lose something that you're in the middle of doing. And I don't feel like that is a good match for this. We don't make them confirm on the permissions page when they add
Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's also for things that are like, this action cannot be undone, and the action we're talking about here can absolutely be undone.
In fact, it can be undone with no side effects other than turning off or decouple that. But
would it make sense as a result of putting this into the mode that would be warned on, that it would report on when you made that change and you enabled it into the state that you want to warn people about, that would be visible when they do reports on the site?
that was my next question, which was, can we come up with a status report entry for this? Because even with this stuff, the security team is still kind of nervous about this. There's still detractors. So can we come up with a status report, just an informational one, not a warning, that explains?
I mean, if it's informational one, that's basically useless. So where I'm worried about that is that one use case for this is say the fancy comments module. So someone makes a comments module where you have Facebook style comments where the new comments come in via AJAX request and they appear in yellow. And then you can see someone's typing a comment as they're typing it, this fancy comments, ta-da. that module would need to be enabled and have this read-write mode on in order to work. You are not using JSON API as far as you know. Like you know that it's there only because like it told you to turn that on as part of the readme.txt, but you're not really doing anything with it yourself. So I don't know what that does other than scare people.
It's more that in addition to comments, your 57 other resources are also available, right? Like
Yes.
Something like N resources are readable, 0 resources are writable, or N resources are readable and writable.
But as an end user, what do I do about that? Like I can't do anything about it, right?
Well, it's not an end user, it's the admin status reports page.
Yeah, but okay, so as user 1 who's not a developer, what can I do about that?
Well, the use case that I think is important is there's Drupal get intent. So we have something that is directly affecting JSON API, and people would need to know whether or not their site had this type of level of vulnerability in it. And if you only have that within the configurations page, rather than having it reported upon, then they won't necessarily know to look here. Whereas if it's on that page, you can trigger off the fact that the module is enabled, and you can look at it and know, okay, this is a vulnerability, this crit applies to my site. Otherwise, you wouldn't know that you had this global configuration.
I mean, you can use what I would do if I saw that there was a problem with the JSON API module, I would first go to the modules page and I would see if JSON API had a check mark next to it. That's how I would tell if I had it or not. And then I would use the mitigation strategy in the SA, which would be turn the thing to read-only mode by going to this path. And I would do that. So I don't know what information like 57 resource. I'm not going to know what a resource is because again, I just installed fancy comments module. Don't know any of this stuff. So like, I don't know what information 57 resources are available is going to do for me. It's not going to give me more security, I guess.
I mean, I don't, they somehow like what we want the user to know, like that it's not, they have enabled access to not only fancy comments, but other things. And so that they can choose a mitigation strategy like installing JSON API extras or auditing the permissions, like make sure your node permissions are configured correctly because there's an increased risk of wormable exploits if you set this up wrong for other things and so forth. Like that's I don't know exactly like how to convey this to user, but that's the information like a user should be able to drill down and find out what the consequences of the choice are. The details, and I'm not sure how, but
yeah, I feel like if that's what you want to convey, do it here. Don't do it in the status report that they'll never read. Like do it as
I read
write-only mode or read-write mode. Warning: this allows access to all of the things, and you should take precautions in handbook page. We can do it. I just don't think it's going to be effective. Like it doesn't, to me, that doesn't improve the security at all because I don't read anything in that status report. It is way too noisy, especially if it's not a warning and it's just an info. It's like that is basically like saying write some text out that no one will ever read. That's what I'm worried about there.
See, I actually, as a site, sorry.
We're saying the same thing. Yes, I read them too.
Was that what you were going to say, Thomas?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like that's how I actually go through my site every upgrade is I check to see where things are at and what errors I've got shown. So for me, if anything, I'd love usability to take a look at that page someday and look at how we could make it more useful, but it already is useful and I use it.
So since you're someone who uses that page, what would the status report look like? Knowing what they want to convey, what information would be helpful to you in that status report message?
Well, I would like to know specifically what caused the need for the JSON API. So if there's a dependency for something like that, I'd want to know it. Because we have JSON API and you have all those things, and most things would normally be in a write or a read-only mode, and that would be the default secure setting as a site builder. However, if I put in the fancy comments and fancy comments turn that on, and I didn't, as a site builder, understand the ramifications for everything else that I just opened up. I would want that communicated in some way on that page, because the warnings and the permissions matrix is so messy, especially in some of the distributions like Lightning, where you have is just insane. And it's very difficult to read. I find the report page to be much more concise. And so simply seeing their warning, and if we're going to warn people on the fact that they've got experimental modules enabled, but we're not going to warn them when someone can delete or remove things remotely because they've enabled a module, to me, that's disproportionate fear. Like, I'm much more afraid of opening up JSON API, and I really wish a module would say, you really need to be sure you want to enable this module before that happens. So the report page is the one opportunity I have to get that warning and say, hey, warning or caution or something in between. Maybe there's not enough states, but I would warn for now, or at least have informational to read. Because I don't go through every one of my configuration pages, but I do go to my report page on a regular basis.
So something like JSON API, bright access, blah, ensure that something. Ensure that access is configured correctly for link to page.
Yeah, something along those lines. Yes.
Okay.
So just to be clear, when you're in write supported mode, it's not like it's automatically vulnerable, right? I mean, access, normal access rules apply. So if you don't have permission to edit nodes through the web, you also don't have permission to do it through JSON API. But theoretically, right? What this is mitigating is if it turns out that there's a particular security vulnerability that's discovered, that then puts someone in that position. So I think what Thomas said still applies. I guess I just want to be. I think it makes it a little harder because I kind of feel like I think what it means is that under normal circumstances, which is, someone has a site, they enable JSON API, and they enable JSON API because they actually want to have a decoupled front end to do things like, posting comments or even editing content on their site. And that's like a totally legitimate use case. Then we'd be warning people. Right, a warning sort of conveys that you might be doing something wrong, but the administrator actually isn't doing anything wrong. They might be in a state that they're not happy about if a security vulnerability is disclosed.
Yes.
But yeah.
And which, to be clear, is highly probable. Like, we've had a ton of these, and there are probably more compared to any other kind of vulnerability in the past several years.
It's why I linked this to my. I'm sorry.
No,
it's why for me this is similar to the experimental modules warning that we have on that page. They're very, very similar things, and it brings up, maybe we need something beyond those types of warnings. Maybe there needs to be warnings that you simply acknowledge after every update, or something along those lines, where you say, okay, yeah, I acknowledge this warning. I know that my JSON API is available. Look at your stuff and see if any of the vulnerabilities are there. The other thing is the instructions page should be linked to this to say, if there is something that is catastrophic, if you have a high level or a critical level error or vulnerability, you can go to this page, switch modes, and temporarily address it, because there's a lot of customers that can't update their sites within 24 or 48 hours. And the only remediation would be to change this. So making certain that was very readily visible in the documentation is a key thing. And not everybody reads the docs page. And so that's why having it in the report is helpful for some of us.
We definitely need to write that handbook page, and because I don't think it exists yet. And we definitely, that there's also the possibility, like, we could downgrade this from a warning to something more neutral later, when we're more confident of Core's like mitigations for stuff, because there's a bunch of other work we want to do internally inside Drupal to mitigate risks, and so we could, if
I'm less on board with that. I mean, then in order to enable the fancy comments module, you will always have a warning in your status page. Like, that sucks.
No, that's what I'm saying is that we could downgrade it later.
Like
Like,
but
we
by
could-
later you mean like a year or 12 months from, or that's the same thing.
Right. I mean, I
But
think
like,
that,
yeah, I guess I'm worried about that because it's not clear to me when that point is achieved. Like, when are we confident enough?
so yeah, that's something else that we need, that is follow-up work from the JSON API initial commit. Wim and Alex and I were discussing this earlier. There is a we don't need to get into the details in this call because I think we're taking up more time than we said we would already. But the scope of when we're confident enough to maybe go to the second proposal, which we're not discussing here, is that's TBD. But there's we need to define the requirements for it. But it is something that we already need to define requirements for anyway. So.
I'm still stuck on, originally you were asking about adding an information message in the status report, which to me seemed useless, but Thomas said, nope, it's useful. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now we're talking about making it a warning, a perma warning that is there forever as long as you have any module that enables JSON API read-write mode. And that is less awesome. I feel like these poor maintainers of this module have had their soul chipped away at on every front.
It's we wouldn't, and I didn't propose in elevating it to warning, by the way. I just thought that Thomas's explanation was compelling, because it, right now a warning is appropriate, right? It is, or might be more appropriate.
Well, it's theoretically more appropriate. We have recent evidence that it is appropriate, but it shouldn't be, because in theory, core should just take care of access.
Right. But I think the thing that's important for warnings is that there needs to be an action associated with them. And if the action is, make sure your node access permissions are set up correctly, because it's not only about security vulnerabilities, right? It's about a lot of Drupal sites rely on security by obscurity for various routes and pages and stuff. Views setups are notorious for this, right? So if you can only get to a list of things at a specific path, but it would totally, JSON API would be here you go, edit this, right? Because it's very discoverable with JSON API. So it's not only about, and the handbook page would explain this, it's not only about things that we don't know about that are wrong, it's also about site builders double checking their choices about all the things.
I think we should take that to a follow-up issue at any rate. It seems contentious enough that we should not include it as part of this. My concern is that, yeah, exactly. You can point them in a handbook page, but there's no way to ever get rid of the warning. And that's what I'm worried about. For an end user to do it anyway. We as core can someday decide to make it on a warning, but that's out of their hands. So. But can we spin that off into a separate issue and not couple it with this checkbox? Because this checkbox seems to have broad consensus that it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I took notes here, and we could, I'll make a note that it's a remaining task to either add an info message or discuss whether there should be info or warning or whatever is the follow-up.
Cool.
That's all the questions I have. Sorry for taking up so much time on this.
Thanks, everyone, for all your feedback on it.
So just before we move off, Jess, are you going to write up the comment summarizing that? Or
I took notes, so I can probably do that, yeah.
Okay, sweet. Generally, the way it works is whoever brings the topic to the meeting writes the comment. But
that was collectively Alex and I, but it's Alex's... well, actually, honestly, I don't know. Alex, do you have, I think that, well, we can discuss this offline.
Yeah, we can discuss it. I just want to make sure somebody had that. So it sounds like between you and Alex, somebody's got it. And so that's awesome. So yeah, just so somebody doesn't have to watch a video to learn what we talked about. That's all.
Yeah, I was taking notes. So.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, Alex said that it's only going to be 10 minutes because it's one checkbox. But we can talk about a lot of things. Great. So let's move on to media then. Sean or
if Sean has the demos and all the understandings of things. So Sean, if you're there, go for it.
Yes, I am. It's about issue 3023797. Let users choose what to do after selecting or adding items in the media library.
This issue, before I retitled it, was formerly known as determine what happens when you've chosen things in the media library. So this is just a new title for more clarity.
Yes. So what we did here was, well, we just talked about most of the patch before. What we specifically want to talk about now is when you have selected a couple of items and added a new one in the top screen here. You get to a second page where you can fill the required fields for the thing you've added or things. And you see a list of the selected items. And I can show what this looks like. So I select 3 items and I upload one more. It now shows me the selected items as well. So the thing that Adam was a bit worried about, that having the checkbox here to select or deselect things here as well might be confusing to the user.
Right. It's the fact that while you're adding media, you can also deselect stuff. And I'm not. Is that cool? Is that okay?
I wouldn't. I've used the WordPress media library quite a bit. I run a WordPress site for a blog, and I find that kind of annoying. Like if I'm trying to add something to a post and I'm editing the title and the alt text and what have you, and I'm not sure whether I've deselected it. Like you want to click on a photo to say, I want to work on the alt text for that photo. And then you might end up unselecting it by mistake. Does that make sense? It's really annoying.
Interesting. So you're viewing it as the bottom is the thing that you toggle between different images.
Right. How else am I going to? I have 3 images I need to add the title to and the alt text of the caption or whatever.
It's interesting that you should say that, because the images at the bottom are not things you're changing. They're things you chose on the previous screen. You're not editing them here at all.
Oh, okay.
And
I
if
didn't get
you,
that from what you just said.
But the fact that it wasn't obvious is also
interesting.
cause for concern. You know, like that's kind of why I wanted.
Well, does that mean that once something's in the media library, you can't edit that information later?
Not from the media library, no.
Yeah, we plan to add that, but not in 8.7.
So how come I'm editing one of them?
Because that's the only thing he just uploaded. So what happens is, like, when you upload a thing into the media library, there might be required fields attached to that new thing that you're creating. Like in the case of images, you have to enter alt text before we can even save the media item.
Sean, can you close this for a sec and just upload an image and don't select anything, just to show the simple case first?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't been.
No, that's okay. That's part of the confusion. So this is what
I'm taking a step back. I'm a new user to the media library.
No, it's great. It's awesome, actually. Yeah. So by default, what you'll get is this, which is like you're going to see the image or whatever you just selected, as well as any required fields, which includes alternative text in the case of images. What was being shown is that in a case where you're adding something new after having selected existing ones, which I'm hoping is an edge of an edge case.
Yeah,
but could happen. So you say, I want this one from the media library and this one. Oh shit! And also I need this new one from my computer. That in that case, the feedback from a previous meeting sometime was that it's not clear to me that when I click one of the 2 buttons, which is the thing we're actually trying to review on this patch, that all 3 of those are going to be what's inserted. Not just the thing you just uploaded. So that's where that's coming from. But can
you have a dialogue on top of? I think a dialogue on top of the dialogue would actually be easier. Like, could it go to having a dialogue to deal with the new one or ones that you just uploaded, and then go back to selecting stuff? Because this user interface is confusing to me. Like, this looks like I'm editing stuff for all 3 images, maybe. And the new one that I've just added is not even checked. It's not shown in the bottom. It says 2 of 5 items selected. The new one's not shown as being selected.
Maybe this can be improved, but another pop-up wouldn't be a good option.
No, but I wonder if including this image that's being uploaded right now in the list at the bottom would help with that perception. Because then they're all equal. What do you think about that?
Well, okay, so there's there's two different things going on here. You're saving a new item and you're selecting 3 items to put into your content item type, right? To your
That
content
is
heading.
correct. Yeah.
I don't like a dialog box that's doing multiple things. It should just be one or the other.
Where
Well,
this comes
in a sense, it is one thing. I am adding pictures to this page, and some of them are coming from previously uploaded things, and some of them are coming from my hard drive. I see that as one action.
Okay, so can you upload multiple ones at the same time? Then what does it look like if you do that?
Sure. Just do this.
Okay.
So basically, the 2 selections always becomes a footnote in the thing.
Okay, so why not have a heading then and say, here are the 2 items that you just uploaded that you need to fix, and these other 2 are the other ones that you're selecting.
That's actually really good feedback of having a label on that above that section.
Because it's not clear at all to me what's going on. It's just
like
2 different
also
areas.
selected : or something like that,
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely doable. And I would just be wondering what would be the right wording for that heading.
Yep.
And whether we should style things a little bit more distinctly. Right now, the area where you're entering data for your new things and where we're showing the stuff you've already selected, all of it is separated by a very thin horizontal line.
Right.
So
the top one could be new items to insert, and then the bottom part could be existing items to insert or something like that.
Christina, do you have a feedback on that?
I like the first proposal about adding just the title below. I mean,
yeah, because in 99.9% of the cases, Jennifer, you will not even see that section at the bottom. The only way you'll see it is if you literally did the Space Cadet thing where it's like all of my images are here, oh fuck, except for this one. And then you go and upload one, and now you're kind of in a weird situation. Normally what's going to happen is you're coming here and you're probably just going to be adding stuff, in which case you won't see any of that crap at all.
Well, I worked on a Drupal site a number of years ago where they had a huge media library, and they did often need, when they were creating pages, to use 5 things from the existing library and add 2 more. So
okay.
I don't think this is an unusual thing, really.
Okay.
It depends on the site.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I built them a custom media library thing at the time because that's what they wanted, but it wasn't that nice. They had to actually go to the media library and manage the stuff, and then they could insert it. But yeah.
So are we thinking these subtitles would only appear when both sections are there?
Sure. But it
might
be easier just to have them, only put the title up on one of the sections if it's there, but I don't think it hurts to have a title saying existing items to insert if it's just the existing items, or new items to insert if it's just the new items.
I don't like the terms new and existing. I'd rather say something about the media library and files from your computer or something like that.
It's more something like you have also selected.
Would it make sense for consistency to also select the 2 new images that are being added, to have checkboxes? And because I know that we've got the 2 of 5 items selected, and we had a discussion about that before, but it seems awkward because when you save and select, that's going to add the 2 new files, and it's going to keep the 2 that are added at the bottom, though I'm confused by the 2 of 5.
Yeah, we actually have an issue to improve that, or at least to discuss if these new items, which are not finished and not saved yet, should be part of the items selected. I think
what do those 2 buttons do?
These 2?
Yeah.
So if you save and select, let me do that, then you return to the media library. So now you go back to the media library and you have 4 items selected.
Okay.
and if I would say
if you did save and insert, it would have
Save
you would
it.
have ended up with all 4 of those. Okay.
then I would insert it into my article.
Okay. Yeah, that's really confusing.
Where this came up from, though, is that you can have reasons to want to do either one at
Sure.
that point when you're getting the dialogue.
That's why I'm wondering if you go to there, if you click on add files, why don't you just deal with adding the files first? I don't know. I mean, if you're going to have a media library, to like only have the save and select button. So you're just going then back to the media library and you've got the one thing selected.
That was
actually-
originally how it was done. Yeah.
That's how it works without the patch.
Yeah. What was frustrating about that is that it's an extra at least 1 click, if not 2 clicks every time.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because once you get on a roll and you understand the role of the media library, oh yeah, that's my existing stuff. A lot of times, at least every time I write a blog post, I'm not reusing media. I'm uploading a new thing.
I agree.
And
I'm never doing
so
that.
I want to just like add, upload it, fill out the stupid required shit, and then go back to the node form immediately. And when I have to do save and select and then move my mouse to somewhere else and click a different, like it's just very frustrating.
Okay. So then if you've, it seems like then, first of all, the thing that you usually want to do should be first. So it should be, the save and insert should be first. And maybe you can think of better names for the buttons that like insert into post or return to the media library or something like that.
Well, the path we really want people to use is to go back to the media library, because
why is that?
We want to show people that everything you just saved here will be part of the media library and will be visible for everybody that has the media library in their site. So that really conveys that this thing is going to live somewhere where other people can use it.
I think you want that the first couple of times that they use this form, but once they understand that concept, I don't think we need to continue teaching them that.
Well, I guess that's why we have the save and insert button here, but it's just the secondary action is just for experienced users, I guess.
Well, save.
And improving the wording of the buttons is also a separate issue.
Okay.
Like this was something we was like, this is good enough for now, and we can improve on this later.
Yeah, though if you have a Einstein idea, we would love to hear it. Because we did go back and forth on the name of those buttons.
Headings on those 2 sections would be helpful.
Sorry?
I still think headings on those 2 sections would be helpful.
We could definitely add a text.
And the text at the top that says the media item has been created, fill in any required fields and save to add it to the media library. So, I mean, that only applies to the top section, for one thing. And it's also confusing because you said it hasn't really been added to the media library until the alternative text has been filled in.
Yes, so that's, yeah.
Okay, but it says it's been created, so.
Yeah, created but not saved. I'm not sure how clear that is.
That isn't clear. Yeah, yeah. I don't like it. To me, created means saved. I don't know.
I would expect if with the wording there of this the media item has been created, if I hit the X to close this, I would expect that image to be in my media library.
What happens if you click the X, out of curiosity?
This thing is not saved at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just avoid that first sentence. Like, you don't need to tell people it's created because they see it's there. That created is a kind of like, it's a temporary thing that's not yet saved. So we just ignore the first sentence. We just say fill in any required field and save to it to the media library. Is what they need to know.
Okay.
Right.
And then we add a second text above here, something along the lines of, hey, this is something you have also previously selected or something.
Yeah, media library items, and then new items at the top and media library items at the bottom. I don't know.
I feel, so are you saying at the top having a title and the text?
Yeah, I don't actually think you need the text saying fill in required fields. I mean, there's fields and they've got stars on them. It's kind of obvious, but
yeah, I think what we were trying to get at is that although you are seeing this image here, but it's not yet in your media library, which is, by the way, the same thing for everything else in Drupal. If you see something in the field until you save it, it's not saved.
right. But if you put up there new item or new items, and then down below media library items, and you've got 2 stars on there showing that those are required fields, and if you don't fill them in, you can't save the form, right?
Yeah.
So,
what is the pushback to add new items and select media library or whatever? As I'm talking through this, I can see why we're pushing back. But like Christina and or Sean, do you have specific you seem kind of on this idea?
I do think that adding a title below about saying something like also adding these other items or something like that, I do think that's really useful. Yeah. What I'm kind of concerned is adding too much elements.
That's what I'm saying. Just replace that sentence with a short header that says newly uploaded files or something like that.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I mean, my concern is just having a bunch of stuff there, which adds more noise there.
Live firebugging or whatever it's called.
So can we copy that here?
Yeah, we don't have text at the top of any form saying fill in all the required fields and click save. I mean, that's kind of what you do with forms.
I think the critical message the team's trying to get across there is the end of that sentence that is now gone. But the part about once you add this thing to it, not only will it insert it into your node for you, but it's also going to add it to the media library.
Okay, well, so they'll make a short header that says new items for library.
Something like that, yeah. And existing selected items from library or something. That's getting very long, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just messing it up right now, but
it's good to know this happens to other people, because anytime I try to live edit HTML, it tends to end up like that.
We could have this text right here and just let's say it's like the following items are also selected.
Yeah.
What if we don't have a super long sentence here and we just have a small title like also selected or
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Sure.
Because I can hear Christina audibly wincing at all of the text that's added to this page.
But should we then use in the heading for it?
Okay, so just shorten that one down so it just says add to the media library or something. Oh, added media, that's nice. Well, but that doesn't say library. Added media library items.
Why not call one new media and the other one selected media?
Oh.
Other selected media?
Yeah, other selected media works.
I would like something sort of opposite. From your computer, ... and from the media library, ...
But it could also be remote, actually. So we could do
we
YouTube
can't assume
video.
that.
But this is kind of sad.
Yeah, right.
It looks kind of sad, so we probably should make it an H2 or something.
Just be careful about what the add or select media heading is. We want to make sure we don't introduce an accessibility problem there.
So, yeah, if we keep the text like normal paragraph text, it looks kind of sad if it's really short. Yeah. And if we make it a heading, it's too bold, I guess.
I think that's okay.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Well, Christina, do you think it's good? We have one designer on this call, and I want to make sure that she's okay with what we're bastardizing her design to be. Yeah. You're okay with new media items there, and then
sure.
I don't know about this one. Existing other, I don't know.
Additional selected items.
Yeah, maybe that. Link tags, yes. No, you need marquee in there too, man.
Ah, crap.
For the recording, we are laughing because Gabor. I'm just gonna kill some time while Sean is HTMLing.
Yeah, well, it's something like this.
We know what you mean. Basically,
Yeah.
there'd be a break, and then that would be below the heading.
Yeah.
I do think that that's abundantly more clear. It was really fascinating to get Jennifer's perspective because you haven't been on these calls and haven't watched what we've been developing. But Christina, do you feel like that's acceptable within the framework of the design?
I have one other suggestion that might work real quick, and because we talked about before about having like a collapsible field set thingy. And if we collapse the field set and have it like a text here, additionally selected items or something, and then you can click it open to see what it is.
That's actually even better, probably, because I think why Jennifer was so thrown by this is because it's very prominent with the picture being there, that it's like draws your eyes to it. If it were collapsed by default, then it would just be, what is that? Oh, okay, whatever. And then you close it and never look at it again unless you had a reason to.
Well, that's okay, because you've just checked these things off, and if you click Save and Insert, and it says additional selected items and it's collapsed, I think that's okay.
I don't know, Christina, what do you think?
I like the idea. The only concern that I have is too many things clickable here and that can move stuff around the window, but I do think it's a good idea.
Okay, so then we just hide those things behind like a link texty thing or something with a line that's just, I don't know, shoves it down or something and displays the items. And the reason why I added the checkbox here is because if you want to save and insert, and at the last moment you're like, okay, well, I've added 3 new files and I've selected 2, but I want to skip 1, then you should be able to turn it off. Is that a crazy thing?
Sean?
Yes?
If you want to do that, would it not make sense then to also be able to add, so if you had the checkboxes for the new media items, it allows people to add them to the media library, but not insert them? Because it's kind of implied by looking at this. And that's one of the things that was confusing me, because it says 0 for items selected. And I realized the 4 is the total number of items we're allowed to add. But if we are adding 1 new one and there are 3 pre-selected ones, when you click Save and Insert or you click Save and Select, you are selecting 4 items, and being able to do the same thing to every image gives the ability to save it to the media or not as the user wants.
But what does that 1 of 4 items selected actually mean?
So 4 is the total number of items that can be added, because there's a limit on how many media items the field has been configured for. So the 4 isn't derived out of how many are in this media view. It's for the total number permitted by the field.
Okay. But you've also, but this says 1 of 4 items selected, but you've got the new one and the additional selected one. So shouldn't there be 2 of 4
That's
selected?
what I'm saying.
Yes.
I'm going to declare scope creep. Let's deal with one issue at a time. And the 1 of 4 items selected is a different issue.
Yes. And we have an additional issue for that, to solve that.
Yeah.
Right, but what I was saying is we were talking about the blue checkboxes as part of this issue, and I'm advocating for a blue checkbox on the new media items as well.
The new media items are going to get a remove button in a separate issue, where you can just remove it from.
Ah, okay.
Right, this issue is about adding the second option at the bottom left of the modal.
Yes. So yeah, Adam was a bit worried that being able to deselect something here might be confusing. And I think that if we allow people to save and insert here, that you should also be able to undo something you selected.
I'm happy if those checkboxes are hidden inside a collapsed element. And you still have the ability to do that, but you have to open the accordion first and then uncheck them.
I think the accordion would solve, I think, a bunch of issues with this selection thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I tend to agree.
also with Benji, because like, you know, you got the thing, you can unselect them if you really need to, but even if you accidentally bring in something to the widget that you didn't want to select, it's one freaking click to unselect it afterwards. So I think I'm +1 on the accordion.
Oh my God, we agree.
Perfect.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, we had another issue, but we'll keep that for next week, I guess.
Had another issue, but fuck it.
This was our most important thing.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, great feedback.
Thank you too.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you. Have a nice week.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.